Good day to all our viewers. We are very blessed today because we have a career services advisor or career advisor from the Asian Institute of Management, our good friend, Ms. Jade Galvan, with us today to elucidate on some career questions and some burning career questions that we have and to get to know her more. So perhaps we can also ask Ms. Jade to introduce herself for our viewers.
Thank you, Ms. Cecilia. So, good day, everybody. Good morning. My name is Jade Galvan. And Jade, you can call me by my nickname as well. I am currently the Career Services Director of Asian Institute of Management. And in the span of my career, given my background in psychology, I have been working a great deal with people, with individuals, and now in more to be more specific about it regarding their career journeys and efforts. So in our particular unit in the work that we do, we make sure that students are helped in terms of their self-awareness and in pursuing the plans that they've set forth with themselves. If they don't have those, we help them create them as well and hopefully be able to connect them to the proper networks and the AIM community at large within the institute's campus or outside. But at the same time, given that this is my work, I've also done some careers related work outside of the country in countries of Bangladesh as well as in Singapore. And this has been great considering my foundational career in human resources as well. So if you could say the flip side of the coin versus the one that's recruiting, now we're actually doing work that's sending out students to various recruitment, you could say individuals or organizations. And it's not just mainly for them to get placed, but really with a greater mission of making sure that societies and businesses, not just locally in the Philippines, but all over the world, find a talent that suits them. And at the same time, people really feel fulfilled once they have their career aspirations in alignment to their true selves.
Wow, that's good to know. So this is very timely indeed. So we can proceed with the questions now. So before you started your career advisory career, what problem did you experience before starting your career? And why was it such a big deal that you went looking for a solution when you did?
Right. So, as with anyone, any stumbling block when one is just about to get into careers, I think it's the deciding what to do. So, I think a lot of people find strengths and weaknesses here and there, but putting them all in such a way that they kind of understand that this is pointing towards that or the other direction, and then really pursuing it is one great deal. So I think one of the biggest help at the time was probably having people to talk to get clarification from. If not, finding a mentor or someone whose career path is something that you are aspiring for so that you could get at least this is what I did for my particular situation where I asked as much questions. I even created a case study about a particular person just to really get deep dive into how she ended up in her career and what her motivations are. And when I found kind of an alignment in that, then I also tried to pursue such career path. Of course, there are situations that present themselves as well along the way and cannot be helped, but trying to be open to possibilities. And I guess that was the first stumbling block, and that led me to my HR career at the onset.
Wow. So why did you choose that career?
Mm. So, given that there is then now an understanding of certain strengths, uh, if you know about the Johari window, it's primarily something about your understanding about yourself and then possibly what others, how others perceive you So given what you know about that, and there are also what you call blind spots where you might not necessarily recognize in yourself, but that others point out or give you feedback on, and that you cumulatively, all those things help out to say, okay, these are my strengths and these are my weaknesses. And if there are certain weaknesses that you'd like to kind of work on, because that would put you closer to your goal, then that's also a possibility. And the fourth quadrant, which I am very much interested about, even up to now, is that the it's the it's the self that is yet to be kind of discovered, because we don't necessarily have the complete foresight of what's to come in the future, because the future is not here. What is here is the present moment, and the opportunities that surround you, even apart from the extrinsic motivations, your intrinsic motivations that propel you forward, right? So the possibility that you actually haven't discovered yet in yourself is always there. And I found that all throughout my career journey, in which case, oh, I could do this, or oh, I'm not able to do this, maybe I'll try it. And you end up continuing to discover more and more parts of yourself that are actually just embedded there.
Correct. Thank you for reminding me about that Johari window that we've used for so many years in our training courses that we conducted. So it's good to know your blind spots, your strengths and weaknesses, and the perception of
Yes,
others about you, right?
yes,
So just in case you're also aware, there's self-awareness,
yes,
right? So it's very important.
yes. And
So
in that, I discovered that the strength really is in relating to people, in helping modality, because there are also careers that not necessarily equate to helping. Some are more enterprising than others, while others are more technical or mechanical in nature. But for me, the discovery was it's really about relating to people, helping people, connecting people. And on the flip side also, I realized that I really enjoy change and variety in the type of work that I do. So as you know, like when we started in human resource, I started in human resources. It's also changed the variety because there are several functional areas in HR alone, and you get to deal with kind of like different departments. And in my case, where I joined a conglomerate, they also have several types of, you could say, departments or businesses that you could kind of involve yourself in and may not have that background yet, but learn it along the way. So expanding out of that kind of corporate situation, and then finding myself in an educational institution that actually also in itself expanded throughout the years was truly very motivating. And I kind of learned along the way with all, as you know, the institute where I am now is actually, it has four schools, 3 degree offering program and one non-degree offering program, the short courses. So all of the kind of courses, or the masters, the PhD, and the undergrad in each of those courses, I also had to try to understand. And I also had to try to understand which types of employers are actually interested in those types of talents. And for the students, to how prepared are they to actually face the world of work back if they're full time? And if not, how can they transition, if that is the intent, or just maybe make a new kind of like rebranding themselves now as better individuals, or as people who will bring value to the businesses and also to societies that they form part in.
So how did your career solve a problem you were experiencing, and how did you choose or implement your solution?
Uh, Particularly my career now, so the transition was kind of seamless. It was also not, um, it wasn't planned. Okay, we can plan so much, but when opportunities present themselves, my mom would always say this: when opportunities present themselves, grab them, because it's not every day that opportunities knock on your door, and you just have to be courageous, right? And if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But if it does, it will really surprise you, and it will really give you such fulfillment. So I think if there's a challenge that was addressed by my transition into the education sector, it's really helping the youth. I think even if it's not the youth, the children youth, but those who are uh, actually it's their first time to get into the world of work, if not out of the world of work, to kind of process, wait a minute, what happened to me in my work? And 'cause this is kind of a good reflection time when they're going back to study again, isn't it? Like they get to process everything that they've experienced previously in their workplace, and then maybe share it to others, and then get best practice experiences from different mindsets, different viewpoints, culminating that, and then going back again to the world of work more refreshed, or also um, equipped, more equipped with the tools and the right, because the institution I am currently in, of course, trains the future leaders and managers of industry. So it's good that they, before they even get to lead themselves, there's really great clarity in what they want to do. And wherever else they go, they will really contribute to society and even to the economies that they serve, right? Maybe not only the Philippines, because as we know, um, like where I work, Asian Institute of Management is a truly global institution. So we have international students who that may have obligations to go back to their home country, if not stay in the region or try another region. So regardless of where they go, I think indirectly there is contribution to addressing the pain points of society, economies, and the like by supporting them, even in our role as a support unit or system. We're not necessarily directly academics, but it's still, you could say, the most important part of why they came back to study again, isn't it? Because they want to enhance their careers, they want to make sure that uh, it's not only the fulfillment of uh, if they get better salaries after, but it's also the fulfillment of if they feel actualized with with their work.
Were there any support features or relationship that you love, and how did it feel to get help?
There were a lot. I think uh, ever since that moment that you started, I started in my career where I tried to emulate someone who is distinguished already in her own career path. And at the time that maybe not very many people are actually, not very many women are actually in leadership positions. Now there's really a call for diversity, inclusion, equity, and belongingness. But at some point before, I've been working for 19 years now. So I think at some point before that was not necessarily a discussion. Um, so the help came in that people were aware that, okay, you're a woman and that you're trying to tread a particular career. So it's not very easy for women to have a voice typically. And I actually experienced, I thought that was already old school too, that, women, well, nowadays it's possible that women have careers. But when I actually moved overseas to help a more also a developing country, which gathers students from all over Asia that are either marginalized or coming from conflict countries, then I realized that no, not everywhere else in the world is like Philippines, where women can work or freely walk on the streets without, escort or people, or they don't have to be with their fathers or their husbands, or because in some more conservative countries that's the case, right? There's even situations where I got to talk to the students because these are the girls, the young women who come from all these more conservative types of countries where they couldn't even have a credit card if it not for their father's or husband's permission. Yeah, in those cases, and I'm like, it's already the 2000s. How come this still exists? So it's very important that to for the world to be it's not really equal anywhere in the world. So it's women still need a voice. Women need to at least find people who can advocate for them and understand their needs as well and have that addressed. And that was my experience primarily as well. So um, getting into positions where, for example, also in my role here, if it weren't for my current supervisor, which also happens to be the president and dean of the institute, who is the first woman president of the institute, the 10th president of the institute, and the first woman in from Asia as well. So that was inspiring to me, and I think that's uh, kind of something that the youth and the other people would also like to see, like who can I who can I follow? If not, like who can I emulate? And is it even possible? So just seeing actualized dreams give one really a boost in yes, I can do this, in their confidence, and also in the belief that they can make things happen.
100% correct. We need more women leaders to make this world a better place, right?
Yeah.
So,
So
what are your goals as a professional?
my career goals, um, primarily my personal mission is really to be able to help and connect people so that they can make things happen. I myself would like normally to see that their not just accomplishments but things really happen. Like if you pursue one area of your career, by making it happen, there has to be a plan as well. So like 50% of the job is done if a plan is in place, and perhaps another 50% if that's the actual execution of the plan. So now that I'm approaching almost 20 years from since I started working, I think a great deal of things that I've seen along the way is that in the work that I do, I have kept helping people, and moving forward, this is something that I would still like to continue doing. If there's also a possibility to mentor more so that there could also be more advocates in the career services space. As we all know, it's a niche kind of career path. If I tell everybody in my team right now, nobody starts in career services. Each of us have different, career paths before, but we have been called to do kind of this situation. And if we find that our skills and competencies match certain requirements of this, and this is actually where we would end up making a difference. And people would only also be able to realize that along the way. So if I could help make more people realize, especially those who would like to be in a helping capacity, those who would like to already employ technology in the way they do work, because in career services, at least here in AIM, we also want to innovate the way we approach our services, because perhaps career services, when I started maybe 14 years back, is not anymore the same career services that it is now, as we have a lot of stakeholders to serve, and even the approach of the recruiters are also very different now as opposed to before. Before, people just review or read your resume. Now there are AI systems doing that, and also people could already develop technology that could help in the matching of candidates. So where is the people component in that? And that's actually the part that's very important. As much as we are learning technologies, we it's still people who can deeply and truly empathize and understand our co-human beings in a way. So technology can only go so far, but if I could also encourage and inspire my team and other people to continue on the work, then we have a ripple effect somehow in our, you could say, in the nation, and also worldwide as we have international students. So up to when I would do that, there's no endpoint at this point because I have not even yet. I don't feel like I'm in midway in teaching people how to actually do this. But if I can find maybe one or two people who can take on, then most probably that's when I retire. Although I dream that I could retire early.
I'm sure you'll be able to accomplish your dream and your goal. So,
Yes.
are you comfortable sharing data or metrics demonstrating your success? And what does success mean to you?
Mm, okay. Personally, of course, the metric of the institute is the one that is on the more uh, global, you could say, standard because of certain accreditation bodies that govern, saying, okay, this is a business school of high quality and of world-class standards. So the metrics there we provide, of course, include placements of students, how many of those looking for jobs are actually able to look for jobs within 6 months from their graduation time, what positions are they holding, and if any salary increases are being reported, by how much percentage. So that's the metric in career services typically. There's also the flip side of how many company partnerships were you able to develop, on a yearly basis, maybe on a long term, if people also want to progress. And if not to increase the number, but also the quality of collaborations being completed in a year's time. Because all these contribute to student success when it comes to them being able to be matched with 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 employment. And for the student side, they also evaluate the type of work that we do, all the services, the tools and technologies that they are able to utilize and that are, you could say, the institute is subscribed to, that is exclusively available to them. So with that, they give also a rating for our assurance of learning to reflect back to us so we can do better next time. We can maintain something that they find really um, productive and useful and helpful for them in the life. I hope that answers that question of the
Yes,
metric.
definitely. Yes. So, what does a typical day look like for you as a professional? How did it feel and what surprised you about it?
As a professional, what amazes me most, I think, at the very bottom line, are people. Because I actually took up psychology, wanting to understand people better. And the more you interact with people, not just of the same background, but like very diverse backgrounds, the more questions come up and the more confused you actually become. But at the same time, of course, there are compartmentalization of types of profiles of careers, right? Or maybe even in psychology, there are types of tests that tell you, okay, you're more extroverted than introverted, this or that, detail oriented and more like freelance or free flowing type of person. So you could compartmentalize like that, but not even actually to this day, right? It's already very complex. But that's why it's also very motivating because I may not have mentioned this earlier, but one of my true motivations also for why I kind of moved into the education sector is because of I really am motivated by continuous learning. And when you're in a school somehow, you get that firsthand information of what is the most up-to-date information about this particular topic. And people get to discuss that in the classroom. And although we're not there day to day with students in the classroom, when we're doing career advising with them, we kind of get an insight as to what is really their concern with these topics and how they're actually applying or not applying them in their careers, how helpful or not helpful. That's the student side. But we also have part of the work, a great part of the work is making partnerships, right? Making and negotiating with these partners. What should we do now to enhance students? Do you either two things? Do you want to help us help students prepare to get into their workforce, or would you like to directly employ students? That's the easy, but for helping to enhance inculcating values, work values, because that's really different for every company. Even if we say, okay, we know all the values there are, we emulate it, we have it in us, but it's not necessarily because we value some more than others. And if in case we actually get into an organization value completely contradict with ours, then the chances of people staying within that particular organization is close to none, and it won't work. So we also, I'm so amazed to find company partners that have been there for the longest time. Of course, then um, because they're, for example, 25 years or more, oh, you're still there as an HR practitioner. We're kind of collaborating. And that means that probably the satisfaction in the type of work that they do is there, or that they're really well supported by the organization. And that's the culture. But there are also cultures in startup cultures, per se, let's say, where individuals need to be the be all and all around person in all aspects of the work because it's just starting up, and actually being able for them to connect to different types of people. So there's stable types, and there are also those that are kind of like change and variety so much. So, but for people to actually understand the nature and understand themselves and link that, that's where I think um, that's where I think we would really come in handy. Help.
Thank you for mentioning the MBTI personality test type, because I remember also our students at the Center for Development Management, we had to group them according to their personality types, and they had to learn to
Yes.
act with different personalities, not just the same type of personality, right? So they can adapt to
Yeah.
the working environment. They can learn to interact and work with each other. So that's
And
also, yeah,
yeah,
sure.
may I add to that, there are also ones that I remember having a project when I was in human resources. My first like small project was to determine the most difficult types of colleagues to work with. What are their like archetypal types and how to deal with that. So that was very interesting for me as a beginner. Then I had to kind of like present that to our whole team in human resources because it's them that deal with people at the time. And now, even up to this day, I think it's very useful because you cannot, in the truest sense, we cannot control the types of people we work with unless you're the business owner. Perhaps you can choose who to onboard, etc. But otherwise, when we get to different careers, we end up working even with people we don't like, and that's something we cannot control. But what we could control is how we react to it and how we actually deal with them. Sorry,
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that because the compartmentalization there is that.
Correct. So thank you for mentioning also the difficult behaviors and how to interact with them. We have no choice, right? But just to embrace them in the group, learn to work and live with them. So how did your typical day, what did your typical day make possible for you and your profession? For instance, do you have a routine that helped you?
Yeah, yeah, I actually pre before I worked overseas, I had a very good routine of work. It's very work-life balance kind of situation. I did sports in the morning, work, and then sports again at night. Kind of, I don't know how. And then I was studying at the time my diploma course at the same time, and the university where I took it from is very far from where I live. But that was all possible. And then when I started working abroad, that's when I actually took on a more managerial type and leadership type of role. So that also, I guess, it had its no ups and downs, and so the work life balance, whether it's there or not, that's when I felt that okay, I couldn't do as much of the other leisurely, if not this more disciplining, non-work related things that as I have done before. And also one big factor is the environment you're in. So would it allow you? And would you have the support system to allow you? Because if you did have the support system, then if you're doing what other else things you would like to do, then parts of your life that need more attention will have attention because you have support system. So that was by myself. So I have to look after myself, and perhaps that was also the first one. Was in a country where I didn't know anybody related to me in that country, and didn't know anybody at all. So it's just like really a huge leap of faith getting to. But at the same time, when you do that and you allow yourself to do that, you immerse yourself in environments that are not familiar to you learn a great deal, and you learn about other people's beliefs and why they hang on to it, why they stick to it. And then you challenge your own beliefs. And then you say, okay, I agree with you and you have changed my mind. Or I still think that uh, this is what will work for me. Or you also have a very global perspective or mindset that this is good, this is what's good for me, but this is what's good for others as well. So that kind of understanding was very helpful. So the balance may not necessarily be anymore in the extracurricular activities that I've done before, but it's the balance of the thinking and the understanding of others, cultures and belief systems. So that was very good. And then coming back, pandemic time, it was very hard to do the balancing. It felt at the time it was always about work online. So what I did during that time was I joined kind of like mindfulness meditation sessions. I think there was one I joined with MIT online. So it was kind of strange because that was like very early in the morning, like every 3 a.m. I have to get up and meditate with these people that are not from the but because we were so all connected at the time, because it was pandemic and nobody could go out, it was actually possible. Also, joined Simon Sinek's understanding your why kind of workshop that was also done virtually. So if you notice, it ended up more on the self-help side during pandemic instead of the initial like the work-life balance became more the mental health related and the work because that was what was present, that was what the environment enabled us to do only at the time. And now that we've reopened after pandemic, slowly but surely, I guess things have normalized. I could see people running with running groups again, my previous sports groups and teams doing the sports again, and even high school friends reconvening again. So it's for me, I think it's now like finding your tribe. I mean, these people and groups exist around you, which is good, and then you can just tap into them if you need to refuel and recharge, but at the same time, I think I focused a lot more on work as well because I felt that there were more people that needed help because we've expanded also all the courses here at the Institute. So all these courses need support, and even my team has expanded, so they also need support. And that's where I put majority of the time, my time, and also with my dog. I think that's the uh, that she helps me be in the present moment. That's what I always say. Because as you can see, like pets, like dogs, are always in the present moment, right? They don't foresee what's gonna happen in the future. But if they're there with you, then at least you know that you kind of become grateful that you are in a good condition now. Um, you're able to be in a healthy disposition and the like, and have this type of career that allows me to do um, the type of work that I really, really enjoy doing.
That's good, no? That's what pet does for us, no? So they help you realize what is important in life, the now. Live
Yes.
in the now, right? So that's very nice. So what words of wisdom have you learned from a family, friend, colleague, or mentor that you can impart to our viewers? And how did it change your life for the better?
Mhm. I think for a time that was very challenging personally to me and my family was when I was away and my dad had to pass away when I am not there. And when I was deciding, of course, I wanted to go home. That's an instinct. And my work wasn't enabling me to do that, at least at the onset. Later on, I wasn't working with. Uh, I had, I'm the type of person that consults others a lot, but not necessarily make others decide for me. I just truly want to hear different types of perspectives, and then I decide for myself. Typically, also I joke because that if I if I know everybody's decision, the opposite is what I end up doing. That's just a personal take. But what very what words of advice I actually heard from a very senior person from my previous workplace then was that you can, in terms of work, this is also work related. You can change your job so easily, but you cannot change your family. You, I mean, jobs are replaceable, but family is not. So you have to